Hi everyone, today, Hidden NightmaresX brings you the story. The Loch Ness Monster, myth, mystery, and the search for truth. If you enjoy this video, please give it a like, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you never miss our latest uploads. Imagine a place where the mist never quite lifts, where ancient hills lean over a black, endless lake, and where, if you listen closely, you might hear more than just the wind. For centuries, people have stood at the edge of Loch Ness, searching the water for something impossible. Some swear they've seen a monstrous shape slide beneath the waves. Others say it's just a story, a shadow born from fear and hope. But what if the legend is more than just a tale? What if, somewhere in the cold, silent depths, something truly unknown is waiting? Tonight, we journey into the heart of Scotland's greatest mystery. Welcome to Hidden Nightmares. This is the story of the Loch Ness Monster, fact, folklore, and the line where nightmares and reality blur. In the northern reaches of Scotland, where ancient forests give way to heather-strewn moors and the land is cut by cold, deep waters, lies Loch Ness, a place that would become the cradle of one of the world's most enduring mysteries. The legend of the Loch Ness Monster, affectionately known as Nessie, did not emerge from the modern age of cameras and headlines, but from a much older tradition of myth and cautionary tales, passed through generations by word of mouth and ink-stained parchment. The earliest written account associated with Loch Ness dates back to the 6th century, in a time when the line between history and myth was often blurred. It appears in the Life of St. Columba, penned by the Irish monk Adamnan around 697 AD. According to the Chronicle, in the year 565, St. Columba was traveling through what is now Scotland, spreading the Christian faith among the Picts. When Columba and his followers came upon the River Ness, they encountered locals burying a man who had been attacked and killed by a water beast while swimming. As the story goes, Columba ordered one of his men to swim across the river. When the beast surfaced and charged, Columba made the sign of the cross and commanded it to leave, which it did, sparing his companion's life. Though this account is often interpreted as a hagiographic tale meant to demonstrate the saint's power and the triumph of Christianity over pagan fear, it set a precedent. Even as centuries passed, the story remained, retold in churches and by firesides, echoing a common anxiety about deep, dark waters. In the Scottish Highlands, lakes, called lochs, were places of both life and danger. Their depths unexplored, their moods shifting with the weather. It was easy to imagine what might lurk beneath the surface. Medieval and Renaissance Scotland was rich with stories of supernatural beings inhabiting the waters. The Kelpie, a shape-shifting water spirit said to drag unsuspecting victims below, was a staple of local folklore. Especially around the many lochs that cut through the landscape, fishermen and travelers spoke of strange shapes, unexplained splashes, and ominous silences settling over the water. Sometimes, entire communities would avoid certain parts of a loch, convinced that they were cursed or home to something unnatural. Despite these pervasive beliefs, Loch Ness itself remained a relatively quiet backdrop until the modern era. For centuries, it was simply one of many deep, dark lakes in Scotland, shrouded in mists and legends, but not yet singled out as the site of a unique mystery. Travel was difficult, and stories from the Highlands traveled slowly, if at all, to the lowlands and beyond. That all began to change in the 19th century, as the world entered the age of exploration, science, and industrial progress. The Victorian fascination with natural history and the unknown sparked a wave of interest in sea serpents and lake monsters across the British Isles. Reports of mysterious creatures, both real and imagined, appeared in newspapers and scientific journals alike. Some were hoaxes, some exaggerations, but all contributed to a growing sense that the world still held secrets waiting to be uncovered. By the late 1800s, stories of something strange in Loch Ness had begun to surface with greater frequency. In 1871, a local named D. Mackenzie reported seeing an object wriggling and churning up the water as it moved slowly across the loch. Later, in the early 20th century, a few scattered reports described large, unidentified animals in the water, though most went unnoticed outside the Highlands. It wasn't until the 1930s, with the building of a new road along the northern shore and the explosion of modern mass media, that Loch Ness would fully step onto the world stage. But the seeds of mystery were planted long before, watered by centuries of superstition, isolation, and the awe-inspiring presence of deep, ancient waters. Loch Ness's geography itself encouraged legend, stretching over 22 miles, more than 700 feet deep in places, and with water stained dark by peat. It was, and remains, a place where visibility below the surface is all but impossible. The loch's cold, quiet expanse seems to invite speculation, daring the observer to imagine what lies beyond the reach of sight and reason. Thus, the origins of the Loch Ness Monster legend are a tapestry woven from faith and fear, nature and imagination. For more than 1,000 years before the first photograph or newspaper headline, the people of Scotland's Highlands whispered about the possibility that something unknown might call Loch Ness home. Whether as a warning to children, a tale for travelers, or a comfort in times of uncertainty, the legend grew with the landscape deep, dark, and full of secrets. By the early 20th century, the legend of strange creatures inhabiting the Scottish lochs had been alive for centuries. But Loch Ness itself was still just another mysterious, mist-shrouded body of water. Everything changed in 1933, a year that would ignite the phenomenon of Nessie and transform a local curiosity into an international obsession. It began with the construction of a new road along the northern shore of Loch Ness, making the loch more accessible than ever before. In April of that year, a local couple, Mr. and Mrs. George Spicer, were driving the newly completed road when they witnessed what they described as the most extraordinary form of animal they had ever seen. According to their account, a large creature with a long, undulating neck and a bulky body crossed the road right in front of their car and disappeared into the loch. Their story, published in the Inverness Courier, immediately captured the public's imagination. The Spicers' report was quickly followed by a surge of similar accounts. Within months, numerous locals and tourists claimed to see something in the loch. Descriptions varied, but most spoke of a long neck, multiple humps, or a large, dark form moving swiftly across the water. The modern myth was taking shape, fueled by the excitement of the media and the tantalizing possibility of discovery. Among these new reports was the sighting by Arthur Grant, a veterinary student who, riding his motorcycle late at night along the loch, encountered a creature crossing the road. He described it as a long-necked, seal-like animal with flippers, a description that many would later associate with prehistoric marine reptiles. Hugh Gray, a local resident, managed to capture a blurry photograph of a shape on the water, adding further fuel to the fire. Each new sighting and photo was scrutinized by newspapers, and soon Loch Ness became synonymous with monsters. The most iconic evidence emerged in 1934 with the now infamous surgeon's photograph, taken by London physician Robert Kenneth Wilson. This image appeared to show a slender neck and small head rising from the water. Published in the Daily Mail, the photograph became a sensation, replicated in newspapers, books, and later in documentaries and films. For decades, it was regarded as the best proof of the monster's existence, a tangible artifact of a legend that was rapidly growing beyond Scotland's borders. As the news spread, crowds of people flocked to Loch Ness hoping to see the monster themselves. Local businesses thrived on the influx of curious tourists, and the loch's reputation soared. Journalists, amateur photographers, and monster hunters set up camps along the shore, scanning the water for any sign of movement. Every ripple, every unexplained disturbance became a possible glimpse of Nessie. The legend only grew stronger as new stories emerged. In 1951, Lachlan Stewart photographed 3 mysterious humps on the surface of the loch. In 1955, Peter McNabb captured another famous image of a large, dark object. Even international visitors reported strange encounters. The story became part of the loch's identity. The mid-20th century also saw the rise of so-called monster hunters, individuals and groups dedicated to searching for evidence of Nessie's existence. Among them was Marmaduke Wetherell, a big game hunter sent by the Daily Mail, who claimed to have found monster tracks on the shore, though later revealed to be a hoax involving a hippo-foot umbrella stand. Wetherell's exploits only added to the colorful cast of characters swirling around Loch Ness. As cameras and film technology improved, So too did the variety of evidence. The Dinsdale film, captured in 1960 by aeronautical engineer Tim Dinsdale, showed a large, moving shape crossing the water, which some experts interpreted as a living creature and others as a boat or debris. The debate over its authenticity would rage for decades. Throughout the 1960s and 70s, monster mania reached its height. Television crews broadcast live from the loch. New photos and videos appeared each summer, and scientific organizations established observation posts to document every possible sighting. The Loch Ness Monster was now more than a local legend, she was a global celebrity. Shops in Drumnadrochid and Inverness sold Nessie dolls, T-shirts, and souvenirs. Cartoons and movies featured the monster, embedding her image in popular culture around the world. For many, a visit to Scotland was not complete without a stop at the mysterious loch and a hopeful scan of the water. Through all this, the true nature of Nessie remained elusive. Some eyewitnesses described a creature resembling a plesiosaur, a relic from the age of dinosaurs. Others reported only humps, wakes, or splashes. No one could agree on the creature's exact appearance. But that did nothing to dampen enthusiasm. The sheer diversity of sightings seemed to fuel the myth, suggesting that whatever haunted Loch Ness could change its form or that multiple creatures lived in the depths. By the late 20th century, Nessie's fame had spread to every corner of the globe. For the people of the Highlands, the monster became part of the landscape, an endless source of intrigue, tourism, and pride. For the rest of the world, Loch Ness was now the stage for an unsolved mystery that blended science, imagination, and the irresistible promise of the unknown. The excitement and media attention that blossomed around Loch Ness through the mid-20th century quickly drew not just tourists, but also scientists, researchers, and dedicated monster hunters, eager to move the legend from the realm of storytelling into the domain of documented fact. The loch itself, over 22 miles long, with depths reaching more than 700 feet, and its waters darkened by peat, proved an irresistible challenge for generations of investigators, each bringing new technology and relentless determination. The first serious, organized efforts to investigate the mystery began in the 1960s. In 1962, the Loch Ness Phenomena Investigation Bureau, LNPIB, was established. Composed of volunteers, local enthusiasts, and scientists, the Bureau operated through the 1960s and early 70s, setting up observation posts along the loch's shores. Members armed with binoculars, cameras, and logbooks scanned the waters day and night, recording hundreds of reports and gathering a growing archive of photographs and films. One of the most influential pieces of potential evidence came in 1960, when Tim Dinsdale, an aeronautical engineer, filmed a reddish-brown hump moving steadily across the water before submerging. The film showed a V-shaped wake trailing behind the object, and when analyzed by photographic experts, some concluded that it did not resemble the wake of a boat, while skeptics argued the footage could easily show a boat or log. Others saw in it a genuine glimpse of the monster. The Dinsdale film remains one of the most cited and debated artifacts in the Nessie story. The 1970s brought a new wave of high-tech investigation. In 1972, the Academy of Applied Science, led by Dr. Robert Rines, brought sonar equipment and underwater cameras from the United States to Loch Ness. Using sonar to detect large objects and powerful underwater floodlights to try to photograph anything lurking in the gloom. The team captured a series of images that sparked international headlines. The most famous showed what looked like a large, diamond-shaped flipper beneath the water's surface, and other images appeared to show a massive, blurred form with a long neck. The Rines expeditions returned several times, refining their technology and methods, hoping each year for a breakthrough. The scientific approach also included mapping and exploring the loch itself. Researchers discovered underwater caves, shelves, and sudden drops, potential hiding places for a large creature. At least in theory. Other teams used hydrophones to try to record unusual underwater sounds, while some analyzed water samples for traces of unknown organisms. Perhaps the grandest and most ambitious effort came in 1987 with Operation Deep Scan. This large-scale survey brought together 24 boats equipped with sonar, which together swept the entire length and breadth of Loch Ness in a coordinated line. For 3 days, the flotilla crisscrossed the loch, their sonar beams scanning every layer of water. The operation detected a handful of large, moving objects that were too big to be ordinary fish, but none that could be definitively identified as a monster. Some scientists involved suggested these could have been seals or schools of fish. Others argued that the technology was finally closing in on Nessie. As always, the results were tantalizing, but inconclusive. In the decades that followed, even as excitement sometimes waned, the scientific interest in Loch Ness did not disappear. In 2003, the BBC undertook a comprehensive sonar and satellite imaging survey, using some of the most advanced equipment available. Again, the search turned up nothing that could be confidently labeled as a monster. But the allure of the unknown remained. Meanwhile, individual sightings and intriguing sonar images continued to surface. In 2011, boat skipper Marcus Atkinson recorded a sonar trace of a 5-foot-wide object following his vessel at a depth of 75 feet for several minutes. In 2016, Ian Bremner captured photographs of a long, silvery shape undulating across the surface. None of these encounters produced concrete proof, but each reignited debate and drew new generations of believers to the loch. With the arrival of new technology in the 21st century, researchers began to turn to genetic science. In 2018 and 2019, teams conducted environmental DNA (EDNA) surveys, collecting and analyzing genetic material shed by all organisms in the water. These studies did not reveal the presence of any large, unknown animal, but did find a surprisingly high number of eel genes, suggesting the loch may contain eels far larger than those typically recorded. Across more than half a century, Loch Ness has become one of the most intensively studied lakes on Earth. Its every contour has been mapped, its waters scanned by sonar, its depths searched by camera and submersible, its biology sampled and catalogued. Yet, the ultimate mystery endures. No carcass or bones have been found. No undisputed photograph or video has ever surfaced. For all the science brought to bear, Nessie remains a creature of shadows, unproven, but never fully disproved. The continued search for evidence, the blend of cutting-edge research and heartfelt belief, have made Loch Ness not just a symbol of mystery, but also of scientific persistence. Whether monster or myth, the loch's greatest secret still stirs beneath the waves, waiting, perhaps forever, just beyond the reach of certainty. As the 21st century dawned, the story of Loch Ness and its elusive monster continued to attract global attention. While some of the fervor of the mid-20th century had faded, new technology and evolving scientific methods provided fresh opportunities to test the old legend. The loch's mysterious depths, long a source of speculation and hope, were now the subject of some of the most sophisticated research ever applied to a natural mystery. The beginning of the 2000s saw a renewed wave of scientific surveys. In 2003, the BBC conducted what was then the most comprehensive search for Nessie ever attempted. Using 600 sonar beams and satellite navigation technology, researchers scanned every inch of Loch Ness, mapping its underwater topography with unprecedented detail. Their aim was to settle the question once and for all: was there a large, unknown creature living in the loch? After weeks of exhaustive searching, the BBC announced that they had found no evidence of any such animal. Despite the lack of proof, the search reignited public interest and ensured Nessie's place in popular culture for a new generation. At the same time, sonar technology continued to be refined. Advances in imaging allowed for greater accuracy in distinguishing between moving objects and static debris. A number of smaller expeditions were undertaken by enthusiasts and academics alike, each employing improved sonar, hydrophones for capturing underwater sounds, and even unmanned submersibles equipped with high-definition cameras. These missions mapped the loch's deepest crevices and charted its underwater features more precisely than ever before. While they uncovered fascinating details about the loch's geology and ecology, none produced clear evidence of a large, unidentified creature. Eyewitness accounts, however, persisted. In 2011, Marcus Atkinson's sonar image made headlines when it showed a long, solid object tracking his boat for several minutes. Experts were divided over the explanation. Some believed it was a large fish or a school of fish, while others speculated it could be an unusually big eel. In 2016, new footage and photographs occasionally emerged, some immediately dismissed. Others debated in forums and news reports. As camera phones became ubiquitous, more visitors to the loch captured odd shapes and ripples, but none provided definitive proof. With advancements in genetics, researchers took a new approach. In 2018 and 2019, an international team led by Professor Neil Gemmell of the University of Otago, New Zealand, undertook the first full-scale environmental DNA (EDNA) survey of Loch Ness. By collecting and analyzing thousands of liters of water from all over the loch, the team hoped to catalog every living organism present, using genetic traces each species leaves behind. The study found no DNA belonging to large, unknown animals, no sign of a surviving plesiosaur, giant sturgeon, or any reptilian behemoth. However, one result stood out: the overwhelming presence of eel DNA. While eels are native to Loch Ness, the volume of genetic material suggested that, just possibly, exceptionally large eels could exist and might account for some of the monster sightings. Local efforts to study the loch's ecology continued as well. Biologists cataloged the many species of fish, birds, and plants thriving in and around Loch Ness. They mapped the annual movements of migratory fish, monitored water quality, and even studied the effects of tourism on the region's delicate environment. While these efforts were aimed at conservation, not monster hunting, they contributed to a deeper understanding of the loch's complexity and allure. Tourism, for its part, remained a vital part of the local economy. Monster-themed boat tours, museums, and visitor centers continued to draw hundreds of thousands of people from around the world each year. The town of Drumnadrochit hosted Nessie festivals, and shops along the loch sold everything from plush toys to books and artwork inspired by the legend. Even as scientific studies cast doubt on the monster's existence, the cultural and economic impact of Nessie only grew stronger. Meanwhile, sightings continued to make headlines. In 2019, the official Loch Ness Monster Sightings Register, an online database tracking credible reports, recorded a record number of reported encounters. Some of these were later attributed to waves, debris, or known animals, but a handful remained unexplained. In 2021 and 2022, as drone technology became more accessible, enthusiasts deployed aerial cameras over the loch, searching for anomalies on or below the surface. Each new image, no matter how ambiguous, sparked discussion and debate in online communities. The scientific consensus remained unchanged: no solid proof of a large, unknown animal in Loch Ness has ever been found. Yet, as research continues and technology advances, the possibility of discovering something unexpected remains. The story of Nessie is now as much about the search as it is about the monster itself. Researchers, tourists, and locals alike contribute to a living legend, blending tradition, science, and imagination in a uniquely Scottish tapestry. Through the years, Loch Ness has been a stage for both human ingenuity and enduring wonder. The loch's mysteries, whether biological, geological, or cultural, continue to draw explorers and dreamers. The surface may yield only ripples, but beneath lies a depth of history and fascination that no amount of science has yet been able to plumb completely. Standing on the shores of Loch Ness, you can feel the weight of 1,000 years of stories pressing in from the water's edge. The wind carries the chill of ancient legends. The still, peaty surface of the loch mirrors a sky always a little uncertain, sometimes sunny, sometimes stormy, always haunted by possibility. It's here, at the crossroads of fact and fantasy, that we finally step back from the evidence and ask, why does the legend of the Loch Ness Monster persist? Not only in Scotland, but in the hearts and minds of people all over the world? After so much searching, centuries of whispered tales, decades of earnest scientific effort, and the tireless hope of countless visitors, there is still no irrefutable proof of a monster in Loch Ness. The cameras have found only blurs and shadows. The sonar and satellites have mapped every inch of water, but found nothing that science cannot explain away. Environmental DNA surveys have ruled out prehistoric reptiles and giant sturgeon. And yet, the loch's mystery endures. Why do we still believe? Part of the answer lies in our fundamental relationship with the unknown. Human beings are, by nature, storytellers and pattern seekers. From the very beginning, we've looked at the shadows beyond the campfire and wondered what lurked there. Loch Ness, with its dark depths and restless mist, is the perfect canvas for those imaginings. The uncertainty of what lies below lets us paint our own monsters, each generation reshaping Nessie to fit its dreams and fears. It's not just a Scottish phenomenon. Every culture, every age, has its own stories of strange creatures inhabiting the deep. In ancient China, dragons, long, undulating, powerful beings, were said to dwell in rivers and lakes, controlling the rains and the fortunes of those living nearby. Some legends spoke of benevolent protectors, others warned of floods and destruction. The dragon was more than a monster. It was a symbol of the mystery and power of water itself. Vietnamese folklore is rich with tales of Rong Nook, water dragons, and aquatic spirits. The myth of Lac Long Quan, the dragon lord who fathered the Vietnamese people and then returned to the sea, speaks to a relationship with water that is both intimate and fearful. In the muddy rivers and tranquil lakes of Vietnam, fishermen sometimes still whisper about Gao Long, gigantic serpentine creatures said to drag boats beneath the surface, or create deadly whirlpools on stormy nights. Travel east to Japan and you meet the Kappa, mischievous and often dangerous water spirits who dwell in rivers and lakes. They pull unsuspecting swimmers beneath the water, sometimes never to be seen again. In India, ancient temples are often guarded by carvings of Makara, mythic aquatic beasts, half fish and half crocodile, both feared and revered. Even in the modern world, with all our science and skepticism, these legends persist. American lakes claim their own monsters: Champ of Lake Champlain, Ogopogo of Canada's Okanagan Lake, the Flathead Lake Monster of Montana. In Africa, stories of Mekele Mbembe, a dinosaur-like creature said to haunt the Congo's rivers, still inspire expeditions. Each new country, each new body of water, seems to breed its own version of the universal aquatic mystery. What connects these stories? Is it mere coincidence, or is there something deeper at work? From a psychological perspective, it makes sense. Water is life and death, security and danger, clarity and opacity. It is where we came from, as a species, and it remains a frontier we've never fully conquered. The surface can be smooth and welcoming, but one violent storm or unexplained current can remind us of how little control we truly have. In the deep, things hide, real and imagined. The mind, when confronted with an expanse it cannot see into, fills the void with monsters. But the need for monsters is more than fear. It's also about wonder. The world is mapped, catalogued, photographed from satellites and dissected in laboratories. Still, the idea that somewhere, just outside our understanding, the impossible remains possible is a kind of solace. It means there are questions left to ask, discoveries left to make, stories left to tell. The Loch Ness Monster is not just about a creature. It's about the possibility that the world isn't finished surprising us. What about the evidence? The rational mind finds plenty to discount. The majority of sightings can be attributed to logs, waves, swimming deer, or the wakes of boats. Some photographs and tracks were admitted hoaxes. Sonar returns, ambiguous at best, are likely large fish, groups of eels, or even submerged debris. The environmental DNA studies, the most thorough biological survey ever conducted, showed no sign of any large, unknown animal in Loch Ness. Yet, for all the science, belief endures, and there are those who swear, sincerely and without guile, that they have seen something impossible, a glimpse of a long neck rising from the water at dawn, a dark shadow crossing the loch at dusk. These testimonies, while not proof, are evidence of another kind, the enduring power of the unknown over the human heart. I have to admit, part of me hopes the scientists never find a body, that the perfect sonar return never reveals a plesiosaur resting on the bottom. The mystery, the thrill of the possible, is part of what makes life rich. Loch Ness, and legends like her, remind us that the world is more than facts, it is stories, dreams, doubts, and the electric feeling of wonder that comes when you realize there is something you still cannot explain. This is a sentiment echoed by the locals who live along the loch. For many, Nessie is not just a monster, but a member of the community, sometimes a guardian, sometimes a trickster, always a source of pride. The tourist boats, the museums, the festivals, the art, they are all part of a living, breathing tradition that connects the past to the present. The legend also holds power in the digital age. Social media and smartphones have changed the way stories spread, but they have not killed the appetite for mystery. Every new blurry photo, every ambiguous sonar trace, is posted, shared, dissected, and debated in forums across the world. People who have never seen the Loch in person feel connected to the myth. Part of a global community of believers and skeptics, dreamers and debunkers. Now, let's look beyond Loch Ness, to the rivers, lakes, and seas of the world. The same archetypes emerge everywhere: the dragon, the serpent, the water spirit. In Eastern traditions, these beings are often more than monsters. The long in Chinese culture is an emblem of cosmic order, the bringer of rain and fortune, a bridge between heaven and earth. In Vietnam, the dragon is the founding ancestor, but also the force behind storms and floods. The stories warn of danger, but also teach respect for the water, the source of both life and peril. These parallels suggest a universal human experience, the need to explain the unpredictable and the awe-inspiring. Where there is mystery, there are stories. Where there is danger, there are monsters. Sometimes they frighten us, sometimes they protect us, sometimes they simply remind us to be humble in the face of what we do not understand. What do I truly believe? Perhaps it's less important to ask if Nessie is real, and more important to recognize what the legend represents. She is a living myth, shaped by the Loch's unique geography and Scotland's long tradition of storytelling. But she is also a symbol of the world's shared longing for wonder. She is the fear of the dark, but also the hope that the light might reveal something amazing. And in a way, isn't that what keeps us going? The search, the speculation, the willingness to stand on the edge of knowledge and say, "I don't know, but I want to find out." The journey matters as much as the answer. The Loch Ness Monster will always have a place in our collective imagination. Because she is not just a question of science, but a celebration of the unknown. There is also a lesson in humility. Each time a scientist returns from Loch Ness with empty hands, each time a new sonar scan reveals only the ordinary, we are reminded that not all questions can be solved. Not all mysteries can be banished by data. And that, in itself, is a kind of wisdom. For me, Nessie is both a legend and a living reality, not in the flesh and blood of a giant reptile, but in the minds and hearts of those who keep the story alive. She is a bridge between past and present, east and west, skepticism and wonder. So, whether you are a believer, a skeptic, or someone who simply loves a good story, Loch Ness invites you to stand at the water's edge, gaze into the mist, and imagine what might be waiting just out of sight. The search is never truly finished, the legend is never truly explained. And perhaps that is as it should be. Because in the end, we need our mysteries. We need places where the rules bend and the shadows dance, where a ripple on the water is enough to set the mind racing. Nessie, like all the world's monsters, is a mirror. She shows us not only what we fear, but what we dream. And as long as there are stories to tell, she will rise, again and again, from the depths. A silent question haunting the surface, a hope glimmering in the heart of the unknown. Thank you so much for listening all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this video, please give Hidden NightmaresX a like, share, leave a comment, and don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when a new video drops.